So, I don't know, while you're just chilling, listening to the Breakfast in Beauclair intro, go to thehanza.com and, I don't know, just see what comes up. Just go to thehanza.com and see what's up. TheHanza.com. Welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair, a global Witcher podcast. My name is Alyssa from GoodMorhen, and I'll be your host as I, and our international hanza, accompany Geralt of Rivia and his destiny, Cirilla of Cintra, across the continent. So, this feels like a bit of a strange moment to introduce myself again, but my name is Alyssa. I am the host and producer of Breakfast in Beauclair, and I'm an Asian American woman. In the news today, or yesterday if you're listening to the episode, there was another attack, this time in Atlanta, on the Asian community. When it came to the attacks that have been happening recently, I hadn't said anything on my personal social media. And that's really because a lot of my personal followers were other Asians or other students of color that I had met in university. So I felt at the time that talking about these issues publicly basically felt like preaching to a choir. However, the events from today and I think a swirl of feelings around just containing a lot of this frustration and cultural pain and anger really made me think about the fact that even though a lot of my personal network is Asian American or Asian, this international community is not. I just wanted to take the platform that I have to talk to you guys as, not just the host and producer of Breakfast in Beauclair, but also as a friend. When this stuff happens, it can be frustrating and isolating and sad for people in the affected communities. And I know that sometimes it can feel like, well, what can I do? If it does or doesn't affect me, what can I personally do? Whether you're part of an afflicted community or you're outside of it, I think there's certainly a lot of things that we could do to make the world safer for each other and to make sure that we're building communities that exemplify our vision of the future. Check in on your local communities, see if there are any ways that you can get involved, that you could donate, that you could support things like food banks, legal funds, mutual aid funds. This is a very New York thing to say, but if you see something, say something. Oftentimes, attacks against individuals in certain communities, whether those are racial or gender-based, they're ignored. And I know that given everything that's going on in the UK as well, we're having a lot of conversations about how people can be more active. And this certainly starts with not perpetuating narratives against the other. And as I said, step by step to make the kind of world that we envision for our future. And I sincerely appreciate the community that we've built here at Breakfast in Beauclair and in the Hanza. It's definitely been a place of solace, and I appreciate that very, very much. Given everything in the last year and around events like this specifically, I really, really appreciate it. Let's continue on with the episode. Today we welcome Joel Bathana to our Hanza on Patreon, and shout out to Tom from Australia who upgraded their pledge, and John of Riblia who upgraded to a producer level pledge. John joins our other producer level patrons, Louise of Covier, the owner of the Churlish Porpoise, Eric Slagodling, Katie the Redhead of Toussaint, Jacob B., Julie, Jameson, Ava of Gullet, B. Haven of the Edge of the World, Jacob Meeks, Charlotte from Vengerberg Glamorai, Red Kite, the Original Roach, Ariel Kitty, Dustin, Libby the Castel Ravello Sommelier, Clara Odell, Gennady Mundilevich, Katrin from Austria, Brett from California, Wolf, and Corey from the US. If you'd like to explore becoming a patron of the show, head over to patreon.com/breakfastinbeauclair. As for this episode, Brett from Whispers of Oxenfurt and Lars from WitcherFlix call in for the second half of our discussion of Blood of Elves, Chapter 1. Join us as we debate names, stakes, and plagiarism, speculate about the upcoming Netflix spin-offs, tell you what you need to know from the Witcher short stories before Blood of Elves, and discuss the transition between the anthologies and novels. Plus, hear 3 Witcher content creators squirm attempting to Mission Impossible their way to a spoiler-free episode. In our mid-episode news segment, Tidings from Toussaint, Lars from WitcherFlix shares cast and production updates for Season 2 of Netflix's The Witcher. Without further ado, let's finish our discussion of Blood of Elves, Chapter 1. Everyone under the tree is kind of at each other's throats, debating Geralt's Yen and Ciri, the state of the North, what happened, what will happen in the future. And then they realize that Dandelion has wandered off, and he has snuck away after his little performance. Which brings us to the next section of this chapter. In this section, Rience threatens and tortures Dandelion for information about Ciri, and eventually Yennefer intervenes. Peter Kenny pronounces this Rience, so I guess I'll say that. Because the way that I think I pronounced it was just rinse, like R-I-N-S-E. So we open with Dandelion in a brothel, naturally. If you are coming from the games, that is unsurprising to you. There's this man that enters the brothel looking for him, and his name is Rience.
So CDPR, I call him Rinse because he has a Gwent card that has not been released, and they had voiceover, and one of it is like the name's Rinse. And so I've kind of had it as Rinse too. But at first I did the same, where it was like Rience or Rinse. I think I might have actually said it first.
Yeah.
But Rinse. Dandelion's in the brothel, and it's a very different, I believe it's a very different Dandelion than from the show.
Mm-hmm.
This is a more, competent Dandelion. But he comes in, and I don't, I'll wait till the end, because my whole thing about Rinse is how Yennefer reacts. So I'll save that.
Well, yeah, he is described as a classic fantasy villain from the beginning. He's cloaked, of course. He has ugly, narrow lips. He's dark eyes, unfriendly eyes. And of course, you get suspicious as soon as he enters the brothel. And yeah, well, I think you're not quite wrong if you say, well, there's more to him than only, I think he calls him some kind of fan. Whether you get the impression that, well, he says he likes Dandelion's poetry and his songs, and of course there's more to that than only Rience being a fan of Dandelion's.
Yeah, this dude's super sketchy.
Yeah.
And yeah, what you said, Lars, Sapkowski describes him as having dark, damp, and tearful eyes, a pointed nose, and ugly, narrow lips.
Yeah.
And then he again says that Rince, I'm just going to say Rince now, has narrow lips, and he just fixates on that. But my God, it's not a very lovely picture that Sapkowski paints here. It gets increasingly unnerving because, as you said, Rince just kind of saddles up to Dandelion and doesn't even introduce himself. He says, I'm a fan, but I wanted to ask you about this very specific thing that no one seems to care about. And he gets really direct and creepy, asking Dandelion about Ciri. He wants to get to the bottom of something because Dandelion's ballads about, Geralt and Ciri meeting and yada yada, contradict eyewitness statements and accounts that Ciri died in Cintra, whether by the hand of Calanthe or out on the streets as she was attempting to escape. So this is why Rince has sought out Dandelion to try to figure out, is this fact or fiction? And it's so unsettling, this entire exchange.
I do like that this is very much two agents kind of in this standoff. And again, who are they talking about? It's about Ciri. Dandelion tries to play coy and make a run for it, and that didn't work out too well for him. As we do find out that, no, not only is this guy a sketchy agent, he has some kind of, magical ability.
Which increases the stakes tremendously for Dandelion. Dandelion, as Brett said, tries to make this escape down a trap door and unexpectedly gets caught by magic. Dandelion wakes up, strung up with a bucket of lime hanging down his feet. Rince is ready to torture him for the information he's looking for. And Dandelion panics. He tells him about the Law of Surprise. He tells them about Geralt's turning around during the story Something More when Geralt heard about the fall of Cintra. Again, this is partially rehashing stuff for the reader. Dandelion just kind of blurting stuff out. The root of Rince's questioning is that if no one has seen Geralt for over a year, then where is he hiding? And at that point, there's an interruption. But yeah, this whole scene is super tense.
Yeah, I was going to say it's about them trying to play coy again. And The idea of Dandelion, and I like how they said that he used this trap door due to jealous husbands, which again is one thing. Okay, he's a philanderer, he's an adulterer. That to me is less egregious than what comes right after that when they say that he had stolen rhymes or tunes from people. So now I'm like, hold up, is he a fraud?
Hmm.
But yeah, I'll let I'll let Lars handle that aspect. But just him in this tortured spot, and I think it's just because of what the character is. I can't help but almost think it's almost humorous of him just spouting all this stuff, like I don't know, as he's being like slowly pulled apart
Hmm.
by Rince, and his henchmen are kind of helping him there. It's just hard to fully take Dandelion that seriously, and it's just always being tortured. It's Dandelion. He'll be kind of funny with it, or there'll always be some kind of smile or like a wry smile on his face as he's slowly being tortured to death.
Yeah, I think so too. I never got the impression that he's in actual danger when reading that. Well, we know he isn't, the main character of the whole story, not even in the short story, but he's one of the most important characters. So I felt the stakes weren't that high in that moment, at least for me when I was reading that for the first time.
Yeah, it's one of those also, again, having read the books after playing The Witcher 3.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He's in The Witcher 3. And so it's one of those, I didn't think he was really going to die either. But maybe that was different for people who know nothing about it and are reading it for the first time.
Absolutely. And yeah, like he does get some reprieve from that early grave in the form of Yennefer. As this interrogation is going on, there's Rince and two henchmen, one of whom smells atrociously, as Sapkowski keeps reminding us. And Yennefer, or some sort of, I guess, like projection of her, bursts into the room. And one of the henchmen tries to kill it before just falling through this cloud of smoke. And then the real Yennefer steps in through the door and then kills both men. Rince tries to make an escape. He is no match for Yennefer and instead attempts to flee through a portal. And she sends this huge wave of something after him. We can assume it's fire because she says he's going to need medical attention for burns after the fact.
I love that when Rince leaves, that she basically writes him off as this incompetent or little mage. That she just is like, oh, he's nothing there. There must be somebody else behind this, or he must be in service of someone because he's such a little weak pissant mage. I thought that was really funny, and it shows like the arrogance of her, and to me the confidence, I should say. It's arrogance, but this is the confidence of she is a max level sorceress, and she comes in with these two knucklehead henchmen and this just little mage. She's just like, oh, that guy's nothing, as she essentially, like you said, sends a little wave of fire to give him a reminder of their encounter.
I felt when reading that for the first time, it was actually some kind of superhero entrance almost. As she explodes into the room, of course, after sending the illusion first, and where we learn that she is not a fraud. She is that powerful. She is not only powerful, she's also intelligent and clever by sending the illusion first. I think she knows her anatomy too. When she looks at those bodies of those henchmen. I think it's the Yennefer I remember from The Last Wish, from the story of the with the djinn. So
Yeah.
she's definitely the same character. So Sapkowski really got that across.
It's really a stunning entrance for her. She just knifes someone straight through the arteries in the neck.
Right.
And then the other, she fries. She's like, maybe I fried him a little too hard. And Dandelion vomits from the sight. It's pretty grim.
Classic Dandelion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly speaks to her competency and her coolness under pressure. The outcome of this questioning with Rince is more clearly felt in the following scene. Yennefer and Dandelion have a meal. I don't remember if it's in the brothel or somewhere else, but they're eating chicken, which Sapkowski takes the time to tell us. They have kind of a debrief about what had happened between Dandelion and Rince, and Yennefer tells him how she was able to find him. Apparently, Yennefer was also under the tree watching Dandelion's performance, so she heard all of the songs that Dandelion had been singing about her and Geralt, to a little bit of awkwardness. The conversation between them evolves as the relationship between them has since the short stories.
It also kind of resets their relationship that where if people remember the short stories, Dandelion and Yennefer did not always see eye to eye. Their only common like, if you will, was Geralt. And there was some not so happy events. I'm thinking of the Bounds of Reason to show that they did not get along with each other. And here is very much Dandelion kind of gives her some of that information. You know, he deduces some information from Rents. And then Yennefer even thanks him for keeping Geralt company. And that kind of lets us know that she still cares about Geralt and is grateful to Dandelion that Geralt had a friend and did not have to travel alone.
Lars?
Well, what I wanted to get into is actually, now we were just analyzing stuff, but I only have a little fun fact right here because Dandelion mentions that he was at King Estera Toussaint's court at Pontvanis. I scribbled down in my notes, and that this means the fact that he was at Pontvanis means that he must have been in Kovir and Povis while after seeing Geralt for the first time, because we didn't already mention that when Geralt and Dandelion saw each other the last time, right?
We've mentioned it in passing.
Okay.
So in Something More, the last time that Dandelion and Geralt saw each other was when Geralt was trying to make his way to Cintra to get Ciri, and then Dandelion broke the news about the fall of Cintra.
Yeah, right after Geralt and Dandelion see each other for the last time, Dandelion goes to King Estera Toussaint's court at Pontvanis, which is one of the two capitals of the kingdom of Kovir and Povis. And, well, it must have been in summer when he was there, and, well, some kind of time must have already been passed since then. And he also mentions King Niedermir of Hangfors. I think he also appears in the Bounds of Reason. So there's various threads that are coming together in this chapter from the short stories. And of course, what's also kind of interesting, when you read the lyrics Yennefer quotes from her own song that Dandelion has written about her, you of course get reminded of the Wolven Storm song from The Witcher 3. And, well, both songs use the same metaphors and symbols: raven wings, storm in the night, violet eyes, of course. And, well, I think maybe the guys at CD Projekt got their inspiration from this passage in the books. Maybe.
I just want to point out that Alyssa said Fall of Cintra, so Nilfgaardian confirmed.
Oh, no.
Don't cut that out.
I do always play Nilfgaard and Gwent because I don't know how to play anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And Beauclair is still a duchy of Nilfgaard, so...
That is correct.
Yep. The other thing about Dandelion's song about Yennefer is that she picks apart Dandelion's lyrics, obviously talking about the obvious fact that it's about her because he's naming just physical attributes of her. But more specifically, he talks about like her lack of having a heart. And Yennefer has a visible reaction to quoting that line back to Dandelion. And it seems that she is really sensitive to what Geralt may have told him about their relationship, and about private highs and lows in their relationship. So it's clear that she still has a strong connection to Geralt, which was established in The Last Wish and The Bounds of Reason, as well as The Shard of Ice in the short stories. We as readers are getting to revisit that relationship one more time, now from a very distinct perspective. Something that does come up is Yennefer tells Dandelion that Dijkstra says hello, which puts him a little bit on edge. Do you guys have a little bit more context for listeners of the show?
Well, I think at that point of the story, this is the first mention of Sigismund Dijkstra, I think. So we don't really know who that guy is. But of course, you immediately get the feeling that he's some kind of guy to be afraid of. As well, Dandelion is visibly scared after only his name is mentioned by Yennefer.
Yeah, I think we can also, I don't know if it was blatantly stated, to say that he's in service to Dijkstra. Can we gather that from there?
I think it's a little bit implied, or at least that Dandelion owes him something.
Yeah.
I think he needed to report to Dijkstra about King Evel's court. So I think, right. They are involved in some kind of way.
Yeah, she tells him go to Tredegor, Redania, and talk to Dijkstra and Philippa.
Yeah. mystery people, as Lars said. We don't really know who they are, but now we've tied them to Redania at least, and to having some sort of position in Vizmir's court. And she also makes the point to tell him to forget everything that he knows about the Lion Cub of Cintra and to scrap any songs about her from his repertoire, because it's obviously very concerning that he sung this song and then somebody's suddenly out for his head and torturing him for information. So this is also something that we're going to see continually throughout Blood of Elves, is we see obviously Geralt's relationship with Ciri, but we're also going to see the impact that she, as a kind of like the Schrodinger's cat of the continent at the moment, nobody knows if she's dead or alive, but what impact that has on the greater social political landscape. And it is, everything kind of blows open in the next two books. But yeah, we'll really get to dive into that toward the end of Blood of Elves and throughout Time of Contempt. Before we continue with the episode, we're going to hand it over to Lars from WitcherFlix for recent news on the Netflix show. When we come back, Brett, Lars, and I will continue our discussion of Blood of Elves Chapter 1.
Hey, it's Lars from WitcherFlix, and this is Tidings from Toussaint. Welcome back, everybody. The filming for Season 2 is still well on its way, even though it's almost definitely in its final weeks. So, what has changed in the last 2 weeks? Let's jump right into it. The Witcher crew was filming on some interesting sets in the last 14 days. First, Redanian intelligence reports that the production revolved around a Nilfgaardian stronghold set at Aberfield Studios near London. We do not know, unfortunately, what castle or town this set exactly is. But what we do know is that the following actors and actresses have been present on or near this set. Eamon Ferran, who plays Carhere, and Mimi Hindiveni, who plays Fringilla Vigo, as well as Tom Kenton, who plays Philofendrel, Misia Simpson, who is Francesca Finderbear, and Kane Zayaj, who plays her brother Gage. Moreover, the crew has built another set at Aberfield Studios, which represents a fortified medieval town. As it is the most prominent town in the book Blood of Elves, which is adapted in Season 2, and characters linked with this town like Sigismund Dijkstra or the Mage Reens are already confirmed for the new season, this town set might almost definitely represent the university city of Oxenfurt. In this town, some of the most important sequences of the book happen, so we can expect that Oxenfurt will play quite an important role on the show too. We know about a third interesting set, from some behind-the-scenes photos posted by Redanian intelligence as well. On these pics, the crew is shooting at night and everything is illuminated by a strange, otherworldly red light. It is the same light that we already know from Season 1, when Ciri had her nightmares and visions. So on these pictures we can in fact see Ciri's actress Freya Allen, who is still wearing her Season 1 costume. But this is not an old picture from the Season 1 set, as several of the crew members in the background are wearing the mandatory face masks that have become necessary on the set since the start of the pandemic. On a second photo, illuminated by the red light as well, we can also see a strange, shadowy figure dressed in a cloak in the middle of red smoke. Who exactly this mysterious figure is currently unknown to us. It will be exciting to find out in Season 2. Moreover, Redanian intelligence wrote that the major scene in Cintra was being filmed. It involved characters like Princess Pavetta, played by Gaia Mondadori, Dooney of Erlenwald, played by Bart Edwards, as well as Sonny Serkis, which is a bit of a surprise as the actor had played a character named Martin in Season 1. It is the young man Ciri danced with in the pilot episode of Season 1. Speaking of dancing, choreographer Diana Scrivener has joined the Witcher team. She works on episodes 3 and 8 of Season 2 and is an expert for European folk dances, especially from Eastern and Central Europe. She has already shown her talent on shows such as Downton Abbey. In other news, there are also a bunch of interesting castings to report this week. Due to its implications, arguably the most important one is the casting of actress Natasha Fletcher in a role called Unnamed Priestess. If you know the book Blood of Elves, you of course know in what temple we will meet this priestess. Season 2 will introduce the Temple of Melitele in Elanda. Redanian intelligence adds that we will also meet other important characters from the temple in Season 2. This includes Mother Nenneke, the head priestess and a motherly figure to Geralt, Yola, a young priestess who took a vow of silence, and Jarre, a 16-year-old student who wants to be a scribe. Other new castings include British actor Kevin Doyle, who we know as Mr. Mosley on Downton Abbey. His role's name is Balian, a character that doesn't appear in the books. Moreover, we also know that 2 generals from the Nilfgaardian army have been cast. Whereas it is unknown to us which actor will play a character named General Gerhen, General Hake will be played by British actress Jo Marriott. Her skills include horse riding and jousting, as well as combat with period weaponry. Sounds perfect for the role, if you ask me. Last but not least, we finally have confirmation for all Season 2 directors and their respective episodes. Episodes 1 and 2 are directed by Steven Surgic, whose recent work include The Umbrella Academy or Lost in Space. Sarah O'Gorman is responsible for episodes 3 and 4. We know her from Netflix shows such as Cursed or The Last Kingdom. Episodes 5 and 8 are directed by Ed Bazalgette, who has worked on period pieces such as The Last Kingdom, Versailles, and Poldark. Finally, Louise Hooper is the director for episodes 6 and 7. Her previous work includes TV shows like Flesh and Blood or Lucky Man. As you can see, The Witcher Season 2 has gathered a lot of talent here. Anyway guys, that's it for me for today. I hope you all stay safe and well. We'll talk again in the next episode of Breakfast in Beauclair. Until then, thanks again for listening and good luck on the path.
There are a few things that I'm particularly proud of as the creator of Breakfast in Beauclair. Platform-specific social content made with the Adobe Suite, online transcripts for each episode of the podcast, that's over 36 hours of audio, a robust website through Squarespace, an original theme song and new music for every segment and feature, carefully curated high-quality show merchandise like stickers, pins, and embossed letters, exclusive collaborations with creators of the continent to bring you things like Breakfast in Beauclair coffee and tea towels and the holiday storybook, and a growing international community. If you enjoy the podcast and its extended offerings and want to acknowledge the effort behind the show, consider leaving a tip each episode through Patreon or a one-time donation with coffee. Your contributions work to improve the quality, content, and experience of the show for every listener by supporting hosting services, equipment upgrades, software subscriptions, transcription services, fair pay for production partners, and more. Plus, if we get to enough patrons on Patreon, we'll have weekly episodes of Breakfast in Beauclair. Learn more about supporting the show on Patreon and Coffee at breakfastinbeauclair.com/support. Hey everyone, welcome back from the break. When we left off, we had discussed Dandelion's dangerous encounter with the prince, a mysterious mage, and the bard's surprise reunion with Yennefer of Vengerberg. In the last little part of this chapter, Geralt and Ciri meet the Witchers at Kaer Morhen, so they meet Eskel, Lambert, Cohen, and Vesemir. We unfortunately don't really have a strong time frame for when this is. We hear that Dandelion's scenes are taking place about 2 years after the fall of Cintra, and we don't really have a timeline for when Ciri and Geralt arrived at Kaer Morhen, but I at least assumed that it was before, like way before Dandelion's scenes.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, it doesn't really kind of matter like when it is. It can exist at the same Schrodinger's cat. It can exist at the same time and not, it doesn't really matter in that sense there. I just like that we get Kaer Morhen and we get the Witcher bros, as they've been called, with the upcoming season 2. And I'm really excited to see that in the show, like how they handled them, because we get them here this beginning and we see Eskel, and they say his voice, and it was such an interesting description that his voice was metallic and sounded like a dog's bark.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think of a metallic dog's bark that isn't like a robot, because that's all I think of is a robot. And they talk about like his mangled face, that Ciri's like, that is not a human. Like, that face cannot be human.
Yeah.
I would just be really excited to see more of the Witchers, because we really only have gotten to this point, Geralt, and I really can't wait to see how that's done in the show, and then even more so as they get in the books with Ciri arriving to their home, to the only home Geralt may consider having.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking a little bit about the show at this point, a little bit more about the show at this point, there will be more Witches even beyond the show, as there are 2 spin-offs already, at least in production. I think there's this animated movie called Nightmare of the Wolf at the moment, which is about a young Vesemir. So this will be very interesting to see. And I think there's the spin-off miniseries. I think this is the one where Witcher writer Declan de Barra is showrunner of.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it will be about the early history of the continent. And it also, I think it should also feature the creation of the first Witcher. So I think we will see a lot of this more. And maybe we will have a look at a GoodMorhen that isn't in runes, as described in this chapter.
Yeah.
So,
Because that's Blood Origin.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that has to do with the conjunction, right?
yeah. I think it first
Okay.
mentioned that it will start around the times of the conjunction and lead to the creation of the first Witcher, right?
I don't think we have any sense of what that timeline's going to be,
Right.
whether that's going to be over the course of like a couple days, months, or if it's going to take place over like hundreds of years. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
It will be interesting, though, to get at least their, or what they want to portray, like the dynamic
Mhm.
of the elves and the humans beyond this time right now, which is very much persecution. You know, we from the first part of this, we definitely get that there is persecution here. There is racial divisions, and to do it so much in the past, I just can't wait to see how they handle that dynamic.
And we do know one of the actors attached to the project. The name slipped off the top of my head, but she's the main actress in Queen and Slim, which I heard fantastic things about. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen when she actually gets in front of the camera and when we get to see the outcome of Blood Origin.
Yeah, I think she's named Jodie Turner-Smith.
Yes.
And she will play a character named, again, the pronunciation. I would pronounce her Eile. I don't know. So she's an elf. We know that she's an elf.
Fantastic. The upcoming depictions of Witchers from the Netflix spin-offs aside, the Witchers that we get here in Blood of Elves are, I think, at a much different place than either of the Netflix spin-offs will show. We get this section from Ciri's perspective, and she is terrified. There are skulls outside of the keep, everything is in ruins, and as Brett said, when she finally does meet someone, his face is like hideously disfigured, and he has a terrifying voice. Thankfully, at that point, Geralt kind of comes and the situation is diffused and she starts to feel a little bit more welcome. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty, and I really enjoy that we get to see it from her perspective, this unfamiliar territory.
Yeah, and she eases into it definitely because of Geralt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those, they show up and these two, again, mutant, monstrous looking people are looking down at this little girl and being like, what the hell is this? Like,
Yeah.
who is this? Why is she here? And Geralt makes it known and very clearly, like, she's with me and she is now with us.
And the chapter closes with a short exchange between Geralt and the Witchers in the Keep, Vesemir, Eskel, Lambert, and Cohen. Vesemir, I believe, asks, who is this child? Who is this girl? Geralt says, she's my, stammers a little bit, and then finally gets out, she's our destiny, which I think is a lovely way to, bring everything from the short stories full circle and to ground the new narrative in the new series in something that we've seen before.
I'm not sure, this probably isn't it, but it's also, while Ciri is definitely comfortable with Geralt, I'm sure there's still a lot of that trauma that's brought with her. And when they show up to this weird place, skulls, broken down, keep, and then these monstrous freaks there's still this, what am I getting into? And in that moment at the end is Geralt putting all her fears to rest, that not only is he home, that she is home as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's especially important, because she has lost her home. She not only has lost her home, she's lost her identity. And by seeing all these guys and having Geralt next to her, well, maybe she feels that she can regain parts of her identity again. And what also struck me at this point was that, again, there was this mention of fire, a fire in the fireplace. And again, a fire has the meaning of something positive. It has a positive meaning in this at this point of the story for her, in opposite to what it meant to her when she was having the nightmare with the Black Knight and the downfall of Cintra.
And to actually revisit a moment from the opening scene, as you had mentioned, when Ciri wakes up, there's a moment where she was like, I think I can hear a lute playing. They're talking about the Princess of Cintra. And then she thinks to herself, no, the princess died in the streets of Cintra.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that ties really nicely back to what you just said. This gets to be a potential fresh start for Ciri. Even though there's a lot of, trepidation with being brought to this new place, there's certainly the opportunity for growth, or she's on the precipice of something big. So I think that we kind of get that sense at the end of chapter 1.
No, I think this chapter started somewhere that was filling everything in, and it just hits the ground running and ends with what you need to know. Everybody who was notable from the short stories, we know exactly where they're at. We know what their immediate motivations are. So from a storytelling perspective, it's right there. And if you read this chapter and you're interested, to go on, then you're right where you need to be. If this doesn't hook you, then I guess you know where to go from there.
And Lars, do you as well have any other thoughts on the chapter or anything that you'd like to say to someone who's about to dive into the series for the first time?
Yeah, I think while reading this chapter, I was always thinking it is necessary to read the first books. You miss so many things that are very tiny, maybe, but that get important later. And Sapkowski cannot write about all of this in this summary chapter. I would call this chapter 1 a summary chapter from everything that happened before. And he cannot talk about all of this. And you miss so many things, so many nuances of stuff that will get important later and things that are between the characters. And well, the chapter serves its purpose, definitely, by summarizing the first book and being a nice introduction for those who didn't read the short stories, as we get the main characters, we get the important events from the short stories, and of course the different fractions and their conflicts. But yeah, I really liked rereading it, and especially after concentrating even more on all the characters during the scene at the Great Oak. It made a lot of things more clear for me because there were so many characters involved, and I think this reread was kind of necessary for me to get everything that was happening there all at once.
Mhm.
I think from the short stories, if someone has not read these short stories, and this is literally the first thing they're reading, and they actually want some of that background, if I can remember these correctly,
Mhm.
I think the ones you really need to read are A Question of Price,
Mhm.
Mhm.
because that's where we get introduced to that. I would say The Bounds of Reason, because that lays into Yennefer and Geralt's relationship. I would then say A Shard of Ice, because it's my favorite one. And again, Geralt and Yen relationship. And then from there, I would say The Sword of Destiny and then Something More.
Yes.
Mhm.
Did I cover them? Okay.
Yeah.
So those are just really those 5, and you will be
Mhm.
fully caught up to date. Now, the other ones, there are some very good short stories in there,
Mhm.
but you don't need them. But I would say those 5, if you get caught up on those, you'll be good to go from here on out.
Mhm. And the great thing is that between those 5, they're spread out across 2 books anyway, so you'll have to buy them all.
Yeah, right,
That's true.
So you might as
Yeah.
well just read them. They really are fantastic.
right.
This chapter really serves as an opening to the rest of the series, as I said. And what do you think this chapter tells us about Ciri's mental state and how the siege and everything that follows could possibly shape her character in the future?
I mean, I guess with that, I would say, and you can cut this out by all means, is this very much leans on Ciri, and I've said that before. And to me, these novels are not Geralt's story, and it's
Mhm.
not Geralt as main character with all of these supporting characters. I would honestly say it's 1A and 1B,
Mhm.
and Geralt is 1A and Ciri is 1B, but that's just because he's the Witcher, and most of the time we are with him. But in reality, leading off with the prophecy and then getting Ciri's escape from the slaughter of Cintra and ending with her at Kaer Morhen, this is her story. And to anybody that may be more interested in her or isn't that interested in the typical protagonist, lone wolf, that it's her story. And a lot that happens is not what you're going to expect, for good and bad. This is not a straightforward narrative. It's not a straightforward story. And just buckle in, because it gets kind of crazy and wild, but it is well worth continuing to read.
Well, what I just wanted to add, but you can cut that out too, is the fact, well, we have this first chapter of the main saga, and there's various time and place jumps throughout this chapter. We have a dream sequence. It jumps ahead to Geralt and Ciri on the road. It changes to Dandelion again. Then it changes to another place with Dandelion. Suddenly, Yennefer appears. And then it jumps back to another place with Ciri and Geralt arriving at GoodMorhen. Well, of course, I got reminded of the first season of the Netflix show, where this was one of the biggest, criticism, that they are jumping through space and time. No pun intended, of course. But, this is part of The Witcher. Jumping between characters, times, and places is, at least for me, is what makes these books so special and so interesting, as Sapkowski has the ability to put so much story, so much, feelings, character work into only sometimes chapters, minor chapters that are only a few pages long. And this is what makes it so special. But I think you mentioned it, Alyssa, throughout this episode. The character work Sapkowski does with even tertiary characters is so special. And this is what I wanted to stress again. Time jumps and places which could make things quite difficult from time to time, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, non-linear. It's very non-linear, especially the last book. The last book is all over. So if that's your jam, you're in for a treat.
Yeah.
I think as we said, this does end up being a chapter centered around Ciri. And I think by the end of the chapter, as Brett had said, this kind of puts Ciri in a place where it gives her a foundation for whatever comes next. So we'll kind of spend the rest of the book in the next few chapters specifically kind of seeing if she continues to grow from the trauma at Cintra or if she falls into deeper despair. And that's going to be something that, as I said, that we explore over the next few books. But this really lays the foundation for her character. And so I don't know if there's anything else. Anything from you guys?
I think they heard enough from me. Hope I didn't bore too many people with the historical stuff.
Nah.
I will say, though, that I might have said that Edward III was the Black Prince, and obviously that kind of negates he was the son of Edward III. So if anybody's out there gonna catch me, Alyssa, cut that part out or preface it. Save me.
I will take this disclaimer and put it right next to whatever you said.
Yeah, I think I did say that.
I don't remember. You did mention Edward III, and you did mention the Black Prince.
I think I might have said that they were the same person. So
all right, we'll sort that
out. Just Edward the Black Prince, his kid, his son.
Amazing. So that is it for our show today. Brett, Lars, thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and thank you to our Hanza for listening. So where can people find you guys, and is there anything that our community can help you with, or anything that you'd like to share with them?
Again, thank you very much for having me and inviting me. This was a blast. Lars, it's very nice to hear just different perspectives, especially like Alyssa, the woman's perspective, and then Lars, a non-American perspective. So I really just enjoy not just it being an echo chamber of always hearing, kind of the same thing. And you can find me mainly Twitter, the Fox Bride 4. And from there, you will find the Whispers of Oxenfurt. You find Whispers of Hogwarts. Kind of everything goes from there. I try to funnel it to where if somebody finds that Twitter, they'll kind of be abridged to everything else. So that's really the main thing. And again, Alyssa, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for having me too, of course. And it was nice meeting you, Brett, talking to you for the first time. And as always, it's a treat being in your podcast. And I can't wait to see what you have in store for us for this season, of course. And again, if any of your listeners is into doing Witcher art, fan art, paintings, drawings, whatever, feel free to send me a message on Instagram. It's WitcherFlix. Get in touch with you to illustrate parts of my Witcher lore book. So thank you again.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much for joining me for this episode. And next episode, join us as we discuss Chapter 2 of Andrzej Sapkowski's Blood of Elves.
And scene.
Thanks for joining us at the Breakfast Table. For show notes, transcripts of each episode, and a complete list of our social platforms and listening services, head over to breakfastandbeauclair.com. Breakfast and Beauclair is created by Alyssa from GoodMorhen and it's hosted by Alyssa with the Tidings for Toussaint news segment by Lars from WitcherFlix. The show is edited by Alyssa with music by WitcherFlix Media. Breakfast and Beauclair is produced by Alyssa in New York City with Louise of Covier, the owner of the Churlish Porpoise, Eric Godlin, Katie the Redhead of Toussaint, Jacob E. Julie, Jameson, Ava of Gullet, Behaven of the Edge of the World, Jacob makes Charlotte from Mecklenburg Glamour, Red Kite the Original Merch, Ale Kitty, Dustin, Libby, Clara, Odell, Jenny Mandilovich, Katrin from Austria, Brett from California, Wolf Corey from the US, and John Friblia. Special thanks to Brett and Lars for joining us for this episode, and our international Hanza for their support.